So as I was thinking about this morning's message and the idea that it's really better than we can imagine. Again, oftentimes because we live here and we know the things that we know as we live here on this earth, we just kind of think that this is all. But there's just such a long summer dream. 50 years ago, I think I was probably I couldn't even imagine dreaming what I'm dreaming these days, dreaming what is happening these days. So 50 years ago, I was roller skating, and I was about 12 years old, maybe 13, 14 years old, and I would hear, every time you went roller skating, you'd always hear this song. So again, see if this song is familiar to you from the junior high roller skating soundtrack.
Dream, 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 dream.
So, and who's that by? Everly Brothers. Even the young people know that. So we always heard that. They had announced couple skates, and so I never skated because I was a weird little kid. And so but I love you just remember that kind of song and a bunch of other songs, and that just gets implanted as a soundtrack. If you go and listen to the full song on YouTube or some other venue online in that, it's got these lyrics to it, and we just wanted to use that dream. But one of the lyrics is, "The only trouble is, gee whiz, I'm dreaming my whole life away." But when it comes to God's long summer dream for us, we're not dreaming our life away. It's a real dream. It's more real than the chair that you're sitting in right now. It's more real than what you're feeling right now. Whether you're feeling some pain, whether you're feeling really, really good because of the summer weather, it's more real than the clothes that you can sense on your body. It's more real than as your eyes are open and your ears are open and you're listening to all kind. It's more real than whatever problem or whatever good thing is right in front of you. God has this long summer dream. So again, as I mentioned, we're in part 3 of how to follow God's summer dream. And what I want us to think about today is this whole idea that every God-inspired dream comes true. Every God-inspired dream comes true. Not every me dream comes true. We've already established that. You can establish that real quick in your own life as you're sitting where you are today. What were some of those dreams when you were 12 years old, 17 years old, 27 years old? Where are some of those dreams that you had and they've been shattered? They've been put probably mostly out of your mind until we talk about something like this today. But every God-inspired dream comes true. I want us to go back to kind of the original God-inspired dream in Genesis chapter 12, where we read this. God is, in a sense, giving a dream, giving a promise, giving a hope to Abraham, and that's why we are here today. So this dream that God spoke into Abraham's heart, into his mind, into his soul, into his body, thousands of years ago, is why we are here today, because every God-inspired dream comes true. And so God's promise on that day was, "And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great." So long before you came in here this morning, you've heard the name of Abraham hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of times. Some of us sang Father Abraham's song when we were little kids and teenagers. So years and years, decades, we know this. His name is great, so that you will be a blessing. "I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." And we're blessed through that dream. So I got to thinking, because we're going to read 2 chapters of the Joseph story today, and they're dark chapters. And there's a long period of Joseph being in this darkness as a slave, hated by his older brothers, sold into slavery, goes down, starts to work, gets accused falsely, ends up in prison, thinks he's going to get out of prison, and he doesn't get out of prison. So how does Joseph know God's summer dream story? Long before Moses would write what we know as Genesis, Joseph would know the story, that original dream given to his great-grandfather Abraham. Again, a part of God's story never goes away. So his father Jacob, or Israel, would tell his sons as they were growing up, night after night maybe, at least weekly, for sure monthly. And let me tell you the story of my grandfather Abraham. God spoke to him and made this huge promise. Hey, we're not seeing it yet, but you're here because of that promise as it started years ago. Your grandfather, when God spoke to him, gave him a dream, gave him hope, gave him a promise. He obeyed God and left and came to this land that we're now living in. We're still aliens here. We just live in tents. But after 25 years of Abraham not always getting it right, not always believing in the dream, the hope, and the promise, my father Isaac was born. And Isaac, as he grew up, he had challenges. Here's the story of how his wife was found. Here's the story of me and my brother Esau. Here's the story of how I kind of lied and I got the blessing from your grandfather Isaac. Here's the story of how I ran off because my brother, my twin brother, who was older than me by a couple minutes, he was going to kill me because I tricked Dad out of the blessing. So I ran away and I lived with my uncle Laban, and that's where I met your mom, and your mom, and your mom, and your mom. And we know that's a hard story. But yet somehow God is moving through that. So even as Joseph, what we're going to read today, what we see in Joseph is that Joseph remembers, God remembers. So even though Joseph is going to be on his own and going to be alone in a foreign land, he's not on his own. And he's not alone. Even as he goes through all the pain, and there's so much more pain than we can have time to really unpack. This week someone sent me an email, and it had a little story. Max Lucado, he's a great author and pastor, and he's written books that have sold in the millions. But he's got a book called You'll Get Through This, and he tells an amazing story from different angles about Joseph and how God is with him. So that's what we're going to see. So these next number of minutes, we're going to be reading through Genesis chapter 39 and chapter 40, and then one verse from 41, and then we'll come to a conclusion. So I'm going to try to read from the back screens, and so you can follow along here. We've got some things highlighted because, well, they need to be highlighted. Now, Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph. The Lord was with Joseph, so he's not by his own. And he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. Now the story turns. Well, Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in this house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you're his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her or to be with her. But one day, he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was there in the house. She caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. And as soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled out of the house, she called to the men of her household and said to them, see, he has brought among us a Hebrew. I can't make too many comments on that because of the time constraints on that. But even that he's recognized as a Hebrew, and there was only a few dozen of them at this point. It's pretty phenomenal. He came into me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And as soon as he heard that, I lifted up my voice and cried out. He left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house. And she laid up his garment by her until his master came home. And she told him the same story, saying, the Hebrew servant whom you have brought among us came in to me to laugh at me, but as soon as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment beside me and fled out of the house. As soon as his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, this is the way your servant treated me, his anger was kindled. Again, just real quick. Kindled at Joseph or her, knowing that it could have been a lie. Because more likely, with this woman wanting to sleep with Joseph, there was already some tension, some strain in that marriage. And this master, Potiphar, would know that he's going to lose the best servant that he could have even ever dreamed of. But Joseph's master took him and put him into prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. There's many other prisons, but it's where the king's prisoners were confined. Again, God's hand is in this, and he was there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. Now, again, the story's going to turn. Again, this is so masterfully written and created, such a wonderful storyteller as we get recorded in the scriptures in Genesis. Sometime after this, the cupbearer, the king of Egypt, and his baker committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them. They continued for some time in custody. And one night, they both dreamed. Here we go. There's a dream. The cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, each his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were with him in custody in his master's house, why are your faces so downcast today? They said to him, we've had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them. And Joseph said to them, again, get this question, do not interpretations belong to God? You don't know this God. You don't follow this God. Egypt's got all kinds of gods with the 10 plagues. There's all kinds of, those plagues are coming against the Egyptian gods. But it belongs to God. Please tell them to me. So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, in my dream there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into the Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Then Joseph said to him, this is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly when you were his cupbearer. Only remember me when it is well with you. And please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house. For I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the pit. So when the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, I also had a dream. There were 3 cakes baskets on my head, and in the uppermost basket there were all sorts of baked flour for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating it out of my basket on my head. And Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you. So on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all of his servants and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand, but he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. And then just this gut punch. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. And then the opening verse of the next chapter. After 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed. Things will start to turn around. So through all that, we don't know how many years are going on when he was in Potiphar's house, when he was in prison. But there's a number. There's 22 in all from the time he's 17 till probably the time that he's about 39 years old, when he will reunite with his brothers and his family. But in all those years, somehow, Joseph remembers. God remembers. Even after being falsely accused by Potiphar's wife and in prison. Even after interpreting the dreams, and it went so well. 2 more years. So it begs the question for us as we wrap up this morning, how can we think and remember long? Again, we live in a culture that just wants, here's the next thing, here's the next thing, here's the next party, here's the next day, here's the next vacation, here's the next thing you can buy, here's the next food, here's just now and get it now and get it now. How can we think and remember long as we're following this Jesus? Because Jesus is always long. Or this question that I've been living with for a lot of years and decades is, how can we live a long obedience in the same direction? One of the spiritual fathers that I've read and thought about and processed with over the years asked that question. How to live a long obedience in the same direction. And it's not going to be an obedience to this culture that we live in. It's going to be obedience to this God that has a long summer dream for us. So I want to wrap up by going to a story in the Gospel of Mark with who this Jesus is and how it is that we are following along and why it is that we've been singing these songs, You Are Greater and Bigger Than I Thought, because that's who this Jesus is that we're looking to follow. And as we follow him, he's more than all this culture can offer to us. He's more than this summer can offer to us. He's more than the rain that is now falling on our building and on our land. And so it says this, on that day, when evening had come, he said to them, let us go across to the other side. They're going to go from the Jewish side to the Gentile side. And there's some evil things that are going to happen over there. If you read on after this lesson, you're going to see that this storm should almost be no surprise, as the evil one does not want Jesus and his goodness to come to that other side. So it says, let us go across to the other side. And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was, and other boats were also with him. But then a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they awoke him and said, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, why are you so afraid? Have you still little faith? They were filled with great fear and said to one another, who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? Do you catch over the years reading this story time and time and time again? Sometimes we just miss. We just keep reading on. 4 of the disciples of Jesus are fishermen. They've been in a boat before when a storm has come. And probably they were frightened, they were and scared, but they knew that eventually if they held on, the storm would pass. We've been in storms. We're here this morning because the storms that we were in didn't keep lasting. Even if you're in a storm now, you have hope because you have experience before this that the storms come to an end in some kind of natural, merciful way. But when Jesus gets up and says, peace, be calm, and it stops, whoa. Bring back the storm. I've been in storms before. I'll be in storms again. But who is this on this boat? So that's why we've been singing, You Are Greater. Again, as Stephen D. put these lyrics together a few years ago. Greater than my circumstance, your strength is my best defense. For none can stand against the power of the cross because it's a greater power. It's bigger than the wind of waves. That's what we're reading in this Mark chapter 4 story. It's bigger. Who this Jesus is, he's bigger. Your love stronger than the grave. Only you can save. You are greater. You are greater. You are greater. To get that to the front of our minds can help us follow this Jesus. So as we wrap up, remember, God remembers. He never forgets. Abraham will forget, Isaac will forget, Jacob will forget, Joseph will have moments of forget. We will have moments of forgetfulness. But remember, God remembers. And God has a long summer dream for us. It's better than any me dream. It's better than any American dream. No matter how big and shiny sometimes these American dreams can be, it's bigger. It's better. God has a long summer dream for us. I'm going to follow that dream. How about you? God has a dream for us. It's long. And it's flown with summer. Better than any of the moments that you may have enjoyed yesterday. A long summer dream that never ends. Let's pray.